Okay, I don't know why I keep having sound issues, but I'm coming back with part two. I hope I can get through this. So, what I think where I left off was it's not that money or acquiring money is the issue. The issue was just making sure that you're motivated for the right reasons because your money is going to follow your motivation. The third culprit, the third enemy is elitism. Elitism. Um, Elitism is the idea that people exist on different levels. Elitism is the existence of hierarchy or the mindset of hierarchy within our social community, right? So you have people who you look up to, people who people may consider are the goats, right? The greatest of all time, people who we consider to be the powers that be, celebrities that we fan out about, people that we idolize for whatever reason. It's all centered around the mindset of elitism. And if your motivation is to be included in that circle, if your motivation is to be invited to the table, if your motivation is to become them, to achieve their goals, you're operating out of a mindset of elitism, of this, them, me, them, we type mentality where there's a separation and you have a respect for person. It creates the wrong motivation and it kills your purpose. It kills your God given assignment. Because don't be mistaken, just because you're operating in your gift does not mean you're operating on assignment. There's a difference. Operating in your gift does not automatically mean that you're operating in assignment. So the reason that elitism kills purpose and kills aborts God-given assignment is because if your motivation is to be called to the table, if your motivation is to be invited to the table, if your invitation is to be, I'm sorry, if your motivation is to be invited to be a part of the circle, then the reason that you're working is for inclusion. The reason that you're working is for validation, and that puts you in a position of compromise. Because now, be not mistaken, your gift will make room for you, and your gift will seat you at the table of great men. It will. You have to remember the reason your gift made room for you and the reason God created a place and a table for you was to be an ambassador and an advocate for Him, for God. You're supposed to be bringing God's agenda, God's message, God's assignment to the table. So you find yourself at the table with movie executives, content creation executives. The reason you're there is so that you can say, hey, how about we not create pornography? How about we not create smut that's causing people to have issues with violence, anxiety, depression, fear? How about we not create stuff that's leading people away from God? And how about we just create good, clean content? How about we do that? Right? That's the reason you're invited to the table. But when you're extremely excited and when you have a ideation or mindset of elitism, you're so excited to be there that you've already been compromised. Because now, when you sit at the table and it's this person you always looked up to, or this person who you deem to be powerful or have power to make or break your career, when they come and now they're saying, "Well, we want to make sure that we make content that is all inclusive, and we want to make sure that we make content that highlights all lifestyles and doesn't demonize anyone, and this is just art. It's all art. It's just expression. There's we tell different stories, and you know in your heart that they're not just telling a story, they're pushing an agenda. You know that, and you know that you've been put at the table. You've been placed in a seat at the table to speak against it, to bring God's agenda there. But when you're fanning out and you have a mindset of elitism and you feel like they are the elite, you've been compromised because now they just brought you on board for their mission. And now you are a part of continuing the problem, perpetuating the media that's just killing people, stealing dreams, and destroying people. Okay? That's how elitism kills dreams. Being motivated by that. Being motivated because you want to be a part. That's a dangerous thing because if your motivation is elitism, to be invited to the table, to be a part of the group, if that's your motivation, then you're being driven. You're working really, really hard because you want to finally be able to say, I'm valuable enough, I'm accomplished enough to be invited to the table. When your self-esteem and your identity is tied to what tables you sit at, you switch and you morph depending on who's at the table. And if you switch and you morph depending on who's at the table because you idolize people or you see people as more powerful than they are in terms of what power they have over your life, because God has a final say so over your life. When that's your motivation to get there, the mission has been compromised, period. When you're like so excited to be at the table, and my best friend and I, we always laugh at each other because we're foodies. We love food, good food. So one of the reasons that the Bible verse in Proverbs tells you when you sit at a table, if you're a person who's prone to appetite, put a knife to your throat. What that's saying is, look, remember the mission. You are not there to eat and to be full to the point where you can't breathe and to drink and be merry. That's not the reason you're there. Hey, remember the reason you're at the table. So a lot of times people, if you're a foodie, like I'm a foodie, or you just appreciate good food, or you're caught up in the fact that it's $100,000 a plate dinner, right? And everything is there, exotic foods that were imported from distant lands and, lobster, steak, caviar, crocodile, whatever it is. If you're so caught up in the presentation of the food that's on the table, you're unaware of really what's on the table. I'm going to say that again. If you're so caught up on the presentation of the food that's set before you on the table, you're actually being blinded to what is actually being set before you on the table. What's actually on the table right now? Because it's not the steak, it's not the lobster, it's not the prime rib, that's not what's on the table. What's on the table is your agenda that you are carrying on behalf of God versus their agenda. That's really what's on the table. What's really on the table, what's really being presented before you is an alliance with God. Are you going to stay consistent with your alliance with God and your mission? Or are you going to switch alliance and be in alliance with them and their mission and their agenda? That's really what's on the table. What's really on the table is the need to have a discussion about oppression of the poor. What's really on the table is the need to have a real discussion about exploitation. What's really on the table is the need to have a real conversation about social media and how it's being used to tear down opposed to lift up. What's really on the table is the need to have a conversation about sex trafficking. That's what's really on the table when you get a seat at the table. So that's why Proverbs 23:5 says what it says. So let's go to Proverbs 23:5. Proverbs 23:5 says, thou sittest to eat with a ruler. Consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat, if thy be a man given to appetite. In other words, stay focused. It's not about the food here. Be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Now, why would they be deceitful? They're deceitful because this dinner is not about this food. This dinner is about buttering you up, pun intended. This dinner is about buttering you up for their agenda. This dinner is about buttering you up to pull you over to their side. You know what I mean? So don't forget your who, what, when, where, and why that we talked about last week. What is your mission? What are you supposed to be doing? What are you an advocate for? Your gifts and your talents are supposed to be making a room and a space for God's gifts and God's agenda in this area in life. You're supposed to be standing up for the poor. You're supposed to be speaking up for the poor, speaking up for the oppressed, speaking up so that we get better content, doing your part, speaking up about how money is used, speaking up, being an advocate to fight against sex trafficking. That's the reason you're at the table. All right. So don't let the food compromise you. Don't let the elitism of it compromise you and compromise the mission. Labor not to be rich. Cease from thy own wisdom. Why would that be right after that? Why would that come? The reason that would come within that same sentence, within that same demonstration, the same conversation, is because it goes back to let not the reason you're doing what you're doing, let it not be to be rich. for whatever your motivation may be. Some people are motivated to be rich because they fear not having enough, which is what we talked about before. Some people, their motivation to be rich is because they operate from a mindset of elitism and social hierarchy. Whatever your motivation is, let whatever your motivation is to be motivated for money, you need not to be motivated for money. And it immediately says, cease from thine own wisdom. The reason those two are linked together, why would laboring to be rich and ceasing from your own wisdom, why would those two be linked together like that in the same sentence? Because when you take thought and you're mindful of the way the world works, right? We've all heard that. This is the way the world works, and this is the rules to the game. And it's not about, it's just all about who you know, and it's all about the money makes the rules, right? All of that stuff. When you're leaning to that understanding of life and how life works, it pushes you into a place where your motivation again is to be rich. Because when you are assessing, you're using your deductive reasoning and you're using your God-given ability to process, and your bank account is in negative, right? And you understand that your bank account is negative, and you understand that you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and you understand that you don't know if you're going to have enough money to meet the mortgage or meet the rent or whatever it is. When you are operating in that understanding and the check is presented to you as a compromise, and you lean into what you understand the situation to be, and you do the work, or you take the work of compromise because you're laboring to be rich because money is the motivation, that's a problem. Lean out to your own understanding. Know that God is not confined to our situation. God is not limited based on how bad our situation is. God will show up and provide for you and take care of you, like we read previously in Matthew 6, no matter what's going on. So don't lean to the understanding of what you understand the situation to be. And don't do it for the money. And it says, labor not to be rich, cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings and fly away as an eagle toward heaven, which supports what we read in Matthew chapter 6, right? Don't forget the big picture, which takes us back to number 2. Remember, I told you it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. They operate, they feed off of each other. 1 takes you to 2, 2 takes you to 3. Fear not enough takes you to being motivated by money. Loss of the big picture takes you back to being motivated by not enough. Elitism takes you back to being lost. They're all rotating around each other. It says, wilt thou not set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings, they fly away as an eagle toward heaven. Eat thou not the bread of him that has an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. It says, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, he says unto you, but his heart is not with you. The morsel which thou hast eaten shalt you vomit up and lose thy sweet words. What it's telling you is that when your gifts make room for you and you find yourself at the table, right? And you're sitting there across someone who you know is operating an agenda that is totally oppositional to the agenda that you stand for on behalf of Jesus Christ. You know this. And he invites you to the table, or she invites you to the table, and they're like, yeah, eat, drink, enjoy yourself, help yourself, right? What's really on the table? And if you know that all they do is create content that kills, steal, and destroy. All they do is put their money into legislation and put their money into things that oppress the poor. And all they do is put their money into the pornography industry. And all they do is put their money into things that are just furthering all of the ill in the world. You know that. You know their heart is not with you. So when you don't be so caught up in elitism that when you have a seat at the table, you're compromising a mission because you're just caught up on their status. You're caught up on who they are. You're caught up on how rich they are. You're caught up on their position. You're fanning out over them as a celebrity, who they are as a celebrity. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And the fourth enemy to you being rightfully motivated is lean into your own understanding. And I just talked about that. Because when you lean to what it seems to be, when you lean into what your common sense tells you is going on, when you lean into what it looks like, when you lean into what you understand your circumstances to be, and you're not leaning into the fact that God makes everything possible, He makes the impossible possible. God brings water from rocks, God will bring food from heaven to take care of you. When you're not leaning into Matthew chapter 6, but you're leaning into the other stuff, your motivation again is compromised because now you're motivated by whatever you understand the situation to be. If you understand the situation to be that you're destitute, you're motivated by the need to get out of a position of desperation. If you're leaning into the understanding that, hey, that's just the way the world works and you got to play the game, if you're leaning into that, then you're motivated to, your motivation is, hey, I got to play the game. Your motivation is, I need them to accept me. Your motivation is, I need to be around the right people. And that's killing the purpose and it's killing the mission. So beware of the four enemies of righteous and rightful motivation. And the four enemies of the proper motivation are these four things. One, fear not enough. Two, loss of sight of the big picture. Three, elitism. Four, lean into your own understanding. Steer clear of those things because you being motivated for the right reasons is imperative, is crucial to making sure that you're not just successful, to make sure that you're not just succeeding, but you're succeeding the mission of the kingdom. You're succeeding the reason that you have the gift in the first place. The reason we talked about this last week, if you didn't watch last week's, go back and watch last week because last week helped you identify how no matter what you do, whether you're a painter, whether you're a dancer, whether you're an artist, whether you're a chef, a culinary artist, a money finance person, last week we talked about how all of those things, those gifts and talents, how they all play into the big picture, right? But once you've identified that and you have a drive and a motivation to succeed, you need to be mindful of Matthew 6, chapters 19 through 34, Proverbs 23, verses 1 through 8. And you need to print those on your office, wherever you work. Print those Bible verses on your wall. Have them as a screensaver on your phone. Constantly rehearse that because it's going to keep you not only on track, but it's going to keep you focused. It's going to keep you motivated for the right reasons. When you are invited to the table, it's going to keep you level-headed, right? When your gift finally makes room for you and you sit at the table with the executives, the dignitaries, the kings, the queens, the celebrities, whoever it is, when you're the powers that be, constantly read Proverbs 23, 1 through 8, so that you remember, hey, stay focused. Don't be so excited that you're invited to the table. Don't be so excited about the food that you forget why you're here. Consider diligently. It says, when thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee. It's telling you, look deeper than the food. What's really been brought to the table? Huh? And put a knife to thy throat if I be given to appetite. Stay focused. Stay focused. Stay focused. That's what it's all about. So until next Sunday, make sure that you keep these verses near and dear to your heart as you operate in your purpose so that you're operating and you're motivated by the right reasons, for the right reasons. And until next week, and we dive into part 3. I can't think right now what part 3 is going to be, but it's all about we dive in more and more into making sure that we're doing things for the right reasons. Actually, I think we need to talk about the right motivation a little bit more. I'm going to hold that title off until next week. But we're going to dive deeper into making sure that we do everything, that we are aligned ourselves the way we need to be aligned so that we thrive in His plan for us. And that's what it's all about. So have an awesome week. And until next Sunday, be blessed.